If you found this message today, pause for just a moment before you scroll away. Not because someone told you to, and not because you have to, but because sometimes the most meaningful moments arrive when we least expect them. There are days that pass like every other day. Then there are days that quietly shift the direction of our lives. Last night carried an unusual kind of energy, and whether you believe in divine timing, destiny, or simply the mystery of life, something changed. This message is for you. Not everyone will understand why they were drawn here. Some will dismiss it as coincidence. Others will read the first few sentences and move on. But if your heart feels even the slightest pull to continue reading, perhaps there is a reason. Something happened last night, while the world slept, while countless lights disappeared behind closed curtains, while millions of people dreamed without remembering their dreams. A quiet decision was made, a decision connected to you. Perhaps you have been asking questions that no one else knows about. Maybe you've wondered why certain doors have remained closed, why certain relationships ended without explanation, or why your heart keeps holding on to hope even after disappointment. You have searched for answers in conversations, in silence, in prayer, and even in moments when you convinced yourself that you had stopped searching altogether. But the truth is this: not every answer arrives immediately. Some answers are prepared long before we are ready to receive them. Last night, something shifted. Imagine standing at the edge of a sunrise. Before anyone sees the first rays of light, the sun is already rising beyond the horizon. The world has not yet noticed the change, but the change has already begun. That is what this moment feels like. Invisible, quiet, powerful. There is someone whose life has been changing in ways they cannot fully explain. They may not even realize why certain thoughts have become impossible to ignore. Memories have begun returning to them. Feelings they believed had disappeared have started resurfacing. They have found themselves thinking about the future in a different way. Thinking about commitment, thinking about honesty, thinking about the kind of connection that cannot be replaced, and somehow, those thoughts keep leading back to you. Perhaps this person has never spoken these feelings aloud. Perhaps circumstances, distance, fear, or timing have kept them silent. Or perhaps they have not yet entered your life in the way you expect. Whatever your story may be, one thing remains true. Real connections are rarely built by accident. Life has an extraordinary way of arranging meetings, conversations, delays, and unexpected turns that later make perfect sense. You may look back one day and realize that every setback protected you from the wrong path so you could eventually discover the right one. Think about everything you've survived, the nights you cried without telling anyone, the moments you smiled while carrying burdens no one could see, the promises that were broken, the hopes that seemed delayed, the people who misunderstood your heart, yet somehow, you kept going. That strength did not develop by chance. Every challenge shaped you into someone capable of recognizing genuine love when it finally arrives. Because real love is different, it does not demand that you become someone else. It does not force constant confusion. It does not make you question your worth every single day. Instead, it creates peace. It creates trust. It creates the freedom to be completely yourself. Maybe you've almost given up believing that kind of relationship exists. If so, you're not alone. Many people reach a point where disappointment convinces them to lower their expectations. They begin telling themselves that lasting love only happens to other people, that deep understanding belongs in stories rather than real life. But sometimes life surprises us at the exact moment we've stopped expecting miracles. That is why this message found you now, because hope is not always loud. Sometimes hope arrives as a quiet reminder that your story is still being written. Something happened last night, whether you describe it as divine timing, answered prayer, destiny, or simply a turning point. There is a sense that a chapter has begun closing while another prepares to open. Someone is beginning to release fear. Someone is beginning to believe that taking a chance might be worth it. Someone is becoming more honest with themselves than ever before, and every step they take is bringing them closer to clarity, closer to courage, closer to you. This does not mean everything will happen overnight. The most meaningful transformations rarely do. A seed planted beneath the soil does not become a tree in a single day. It grows quietly, patiently, almost invisibly, yet every day, even when nothing seems to be happening on the surface, something extraordinary is taking place underneath. Perhaps that is exactly where your story is today, beneath the surface, growing, preparing, waiting for the right season. If you've been feeling restless recently, if you've sensed that something is changing even though you cannot explain it, don't ignore that feeling. Life often whispers before it speaks loudly. The heart often recognizes change before the mind understands it. You may soon notice unexpected conversations, unexpected opportunities, unexpected encounters, a familiar name, a message you weren't expecting, a chance meeting, or simply a growing sense of peace replacing the uncertainty you've carried for so long. These moments may seem small at first, but sometimes the smallest moments become the beginning of the greatest stories. Remember this: your value has never depended on whether someone recognized it. Your kindness was never wasted. Your patience was never meaningless. Every lesson you've learned has been preparing you for relationships built on honesty rather than illusion. Perhaps your soulmate has been learning difficult lessons too. Perhaps they needed time to heal, time to mature, time to understand what truly matters. Growth often happens separately before two paths can finally meet. Neither journey was meaningless. Every experience shaped both of you into people capable of building something stronger than either could have imagined before. So today, instead of focusing on what has not happened yet, consider what may already be happening behind the scenes. Doors you cannot yet see may already be opening. Conversations you haven't heard may already be unfolding. Decisions you didn't know were possible may already have been made. And perhaps, just perhaps, one of those decisions has everything to do with you. Continue believing that meaningful things can happen. Continue becoming the person you are meant to be. Continue choosing hope over fear whenever possible, because sometimes the greatest changes begin quietly. Sometimes they begin while everyone else is asleep. Sometimes they begin with a single decision made in the silence of one unforgettable night, and perhaps that night was last night. As the morning arrived, nothing appeared different on the surface. The streets looked the same, People followed their usual routines. Phones buzzed with ordinary notifications. Coffee brewed, alarms rang, conversations began, and life moved forward as it always had. Yet beneath everything familiar, something had changed. Not the kind of change that announces itself with loud headlines or dramatic signs. This was quieter, deeper, the kind of change that begins inside a person's heart long before anyone else notices. Have you ever sensed that something important was about to happen without knowing why? Perhaps you woke up with an unusual feeling today. Maybe you couldn't explain it. Maybe it felt like anticipation mixed with peace. Or maybe there has been a strange calm replacing the worry you've carried for so long. Sometimes our hearts recognize a shift before our minds can understand it. Last night, while silence covered the world, someone found themselves unable to ignore the truth any longer. They had been running from certain emotions, trying to convince themselves that time would erase what they felt, pretending that distance could silence what the heart continued whispering. But the heart has a remarkable way of bringing us back to what truly matters, no matter how busy life becomes, no matter how many distractions appear. Some connections remain impossible to forget. Perhaps your soulmate has spent weeks, months, or even years trying to understand why thoughts of you kept returning. They may have questioned whether it was simply nostalgia. Maybe they told themselves it was coincidence. Maybe they believed they had moved on. Yet every attempt to bury those feelings only revealed how deeply they were rooted. Eventually, there comes a moment when pretending becomes more exhausting than telling the truth. Perhaps last night was that moment. Perhaps they looked back over every conversation you shared, every smile, every memory, every opportunity that slipped away because the timing wasn't right. Perhaps they finally understood that some people enter our lives for reasons too meaningful to ignore. Not every relationship survives. Not every connection is meant to last forever. But every genuine connection leaves a mark, and some marks become impossible to erase. If you have been wondering why life seemed to pause, consider this: sometimes progress happens in places you cannot see. A bridge is being built long before anyone walks across it. A flower grows underground before it blossoms into view. Preparation often happens in silence. You may have interpreted the silence as absence, but silence does not always mean nothing is happening. Sometimes silence is where the greatest transformations begin. Think about your own journey. There were moments when you questioned yourself, moments when rejection made you wonder whether you were enough, moments when loneliness whispered lies about your future. Yet despite everything, your heart never completely stopped believing. There was always a small voice reminding you that your story wasn't over. That voice matters. Hope matters. Not because hope guarantees a specific outcome, but because hope gives us the courage to keep moving while the next chapter is still unfolding. Perhaps that is exactly what happened last night. Someone chose courage over fear. Someone decided that honesty was better than regret. Someone stopped asking, "What if it doesn't work?" and started asking, "What if this is exactly what I've been searching for?" Those are powerful questions. They change the direction of a person's life. Every meaningful journey begins with a decision. The decision to forgive. The decision to grow. The decision to believe again. The decision to reach out. Or simply the decision to stop hiding from what has always been true. Maybe your soulmate stood at that crossroads. Maybe they realized that waiting forever would only create more distance. Maybe they understood that love is never strengthened by silence. Instead, it grows through courage, patience, and truth. If that realization has begun, then the next steps will come in their own time. Life rarely unfolds according to our schedules, but it often unfolds exactly when we are prepared for it. That preparation is important. Imagine receiving the greatest blessing of your life before you were emotionally ready to protect it. Would you have recognized its value? Would you have known how to nurture it? Sometimes delays are not denials. Sometimes they are opportunities for growth. Perhaps both of you have been learning lessons separately so that one day, when your paths align, you can build something healthier than either of you could have built before. Maybe you've learned patience. Maybe they've learned vulnerability. Maybe you've discovered self-worth. Maybe they've discovered gratitude. Every lesson matters. Nothing meaningful is wasted. One day, you may look back and realize that even the painful chapters served a purpose, not because pain is desirable, but because growth often emerges from the places we never expected. Remember this: you were never defined by the people who walked away. You were never limited by the opportunities that disappeared. You were never forgotten simply because life became quiet. Your story has continued every single day, even when it felt invisible, even when no one applauded your progress, even when healing happened so slowly that you wondered whether anything was changing at all. Healing is often quiet, growth is often invisible, but both are incredibly powerful. Perhaps your soulmate has been healing too, learning to let go of fear, learning to trust again, learning that real love cannot be built upon pride or avoidance. Instead, it flourishes where honesty is welcomed. That understanding changes people. It softens hearts. It opens doors. It creates possibilities that once seemed impossible. If you've been praying for clarity, continue walking with patience. If you've been hoping for answers, remain open to unexpected moments, not because every hope unfolds exactly as imagined, but because life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. Sometimes the answer arrives through a conversation, sometimes through an opportunity, sometimes through personal growth that changes how we see everything around us, and sometimes it begins with someone making a quiet decision in the middle of an ordinary night, a decision to stop running, a decision to become honest, a decision to embrace the future instead of fearing it. Could that decision involve you? Only time will reveal the complete story, but if there is one truth worth holding on to today, it is this: never underestimate what can change in a single night. Hearts can soften, perspectives can shift, forgiveness can begin, dreams can be reborn, and people can discover the courage they believed they had lost. Perhaps that is exactly what happened, not because destiny removes every obstacle, not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because someone chose hope over fear, and sometimes, that single choice becomes the first page of an entirely new chapter. The chapter is still unfolding, the story is still being written, and perhaps the most meaningful pages have yet to come. There is something remarkable about the hours just before dawn. The world is quiet, the noise of the day has disappeared. For a brief moment, Everything feels suspended between what was and what will be. Many people believe those hours carry a special kind of stillness, a time when hearts become honest with themselves because there are no distractions left. Perhaps that is exactly where this story continued. While everyone else slept, your soulmate found themselves thinking about the road that had brought them to this very moment. They remembered choices they wished they had made differently, words they never spoke, opportunities they allowed fear to steal. For a long time, they convinced themselves that life would simply move on without consequence. But every decision leaves an echo. Some echoes fade. Others grow stronger with time. The one connected to you never truly disappeared. Instead, it waited, not to create guilt, not to create regret, but to invite courage, because courage often begins when we stop pretending everything is fine. Maybe they finally admitted what had been hidden deep inside their heart. Maybe they realized that success, achievements, and busy schedules could never replace a meaningful connection. Perhaps they understood that while many things in life can be postponed, the opportunity to love sincerely should never be taken for granted. That realization changes people. It changes priorities. It changes the questions they ask themselves. Instead of wondering how to avoid vulnerability, they begin asking how to become more authentic. Instead of protecting themselves from disappointment, they begin opening themselves to possibility. Growth rarely happens all at once. It happens through hundreds of small decisions. One honest thought, one quiet prayer, one difficult conversation, one act of forgiveness, one choice to stop living in fear. Each step may seem insignificant on its own, yet together, those small choices become a completely different life. If you've been feeling as though your own journey has been slow, don't lose heart. The strongest foundations are built carefully. A towering building cannot stand without deep roots beneath it. Likewise, lasting relationships are built on character long before they are built on romance. Perhaps that is why your path has included seasons of waiting. Waiting teaches patience. Patience develops wisdom. Wisdom helps us recognize the difference between temporary excitement and lasting peace. Many people chase excitement. Few recognize peace when it quietly arrives. Real love often feels less like chaos and more like coming home. It allows you to breathe. It allows you to rest. It allows you to believe that you no longer have to earn your place in someone's heart. Maybe that is the kind of love both of you have been preparing for. Not a perfect love. Not a story without challenges, but a relationship built on honesty, respect, kindness, and mutual growth. Those qualities are worth waiting for. If you have ever wondered whether your prayers were heard, remember this: answers do not always arrive in the form we expect. Sometimes the answer is not an immediate change in circumstances. Sometimes the answer is a gradual transformation inside someone's heart. Sometimes it begins with healing wounds no one else can see. Sometimes it begins with removing fear before introducing blessing. And sometimes, it begins with someone deciding they no longer want to let another day pass without embracing what truly matters. Could your soulmate have reached that point? Perhaps. Maybe they found themselves replaying conversations they once overlooked. Maybe your kindness returned to their memory. Maybe they remembered the way you listened when others only waited for their turn to speak. Maybe they realized that genuine connection cannot be replaced by convenience. There are people we meet for a season. There are people we remember for a lifetime. The difference is not measured by how long we knew them, it is measured by how deeply they touched our lives. Think for a moment about the people who have changed you. Some stayed, some left, some never realized the impact they had. Yet each one taught you something valuable. Now imagine someone somewhere quietly realizing that you were one of those people in their story, not because you were flawless. Not because everything was easy, but because your presence brought something meaningful into their life. That realization has power. It invites gratitude. It inspires action. It encourages people to become the version of themselves they were always capable of being. Perhaps this is why you've sensed that something is shifting. Maybe you've noticed yourself letting go of old fears. Maybe you've started dreaming differently. Maybe you've become less interested in chasing approval and more interested in protecting your peace. Those are not small changes. They are signs of growth. Every lesson you've learned has prepared you for healthier relationships. Relationships where communication replaces assumptions. Where trust replaces constant doubt. Where compassion replaces competition. Those relationships are possible. They begin when two people are willing to grow, not just together, but individually. That is why timing matters. Relationship can only flourish when both hearts are prepared to nurture it. Preparation is often invisible, while you wondered why nothing